Once you get into it, Zani's kit is most likely the most complicated kit we've gotten so far, and due to her team setups having really crazy rotations, if you don't actually read the kit, you might just be playing the character wrong. So wrong that you might not even be hitting 60% of her potential. So, in this video, I'm going to go ahead and cover every single detail of Zani, ensuring someone who's never read the kit will come out at the end knowing what they're doing with her. Firstly, Zani has a special interaction with Spectral Frazzle. This is the DLT that Phoebe and Spectral Rover apply on the enemy. If Zani is on the team, these stacks will immediately detonate, dealing their respective damage, and at the same time be converted into stacks of Ember. Spectral Frazzle stacks are usually capped at only 10 per enemy, but Ember stacks are actually capped at 60, each lasting 6 seconds. TLDR, they're basically Spectral Frazzle stacks that can stack up to 60 rather than 10, but will no longer deal damage over time. The conversion rate for Frazzle to Ember is 1-to-1. The next core part of Zani's gameplay, her Forte. Zani actually has two Fortes, the Redundant Bar, which grants energy via Zani's basic attack, intro, and Zani's skill. Once Zani has a full Forte bar, she can unleash an empowered skill, dealing a bit more damage and granting her Sunburst. Sunburst is a buff that will last for 14 seconds, granting Zani 20% Spectral Frazzle amplification. This is not influenced by a skill level, it will always be a flat 20%. Talking about Zani's skill, Zani's E puts her into a defensive stance. While in this stance, Zani can press basic attack to perform her third basic attack, stagger the enemy. If instead she is hit while in this stance, she will reduce the incoming damage by 100%, stun the enemy, and perform a counter. Countering the enemy also grants Zani a 20% damage reduction for 2 seconds. Her empowered skill, which can only be accessed once redundant energy is at 100%, will once again put her into a defensive stance, but this time she is immune to all crowd control. If the skill expires without being hit, she will consume all energy and perform a slash. If she is attacked while in this stance, she will perform a full counter, having the same effects as her normal counter, but giving her a 30% damage reduction buff. These attacks will also grant Zani a stack of Ember, putting her into Sunburst mode and granting her some Blaze. Talking about Blaze, that's her resource for her next Forte. Every time Zani converts Spectral Frazzle into Embers, she'll also gain Blaze. She gains about 5 Blaze per 1 Ember. Zani can hold up to a maximum of 100 Blaze at a time, meaning you'd need to convert about 20 stacks of Spectral Frazzle into Ember. Zani can use these Blaze stacks to empower her abilities and attacks in her ultimate. And finally, we are talking about the ultimate. Zani's Liberation just deals some damage and sets her into Inferno Mode, or Super Saiyan. Increases her max Blaze cap from 100 to 150, and immediately granting her 50 Blaze. This also increases her basic attack multiplier by 25, turning her shield into a giant greatsword, significantly increasing her AoE, and allowing her to enhance her abilities at the cost of Blaze. After about 8 seconds, or if you have less than 30 Blaze, you'll also gain access to Zani's second Liberation, which is just a nuke that will also count as Spectral Frazzle damage, kicking her out of her Inferno mode. So here I could throw a bunch of terms at you and read off the effects, but let's save some time. In this mode, Zani's attacks will consume Blaze, and your goal is to reach this golden heavy attack. This attack's damage increases based upon how much Blaze it consumes, up to a maximum of 40 Blaze, meaning if you have less than 40, at the time of casting, you will deal less damage. You can speed up the process of getting to this heavy attack by performing perfect parries with Zani's skill, which will then cause her to swing her sword twice and immediately allow you to cast a heavy attack. Or you can hold the skill down and after a certain point it will just auto perform the heavy attack, and you can also just spam basic attacks. And on the fourth one, it will do the heavy attack. In the ultimate, Zani is always immune to CC when she is casting her skill, but she cannot cast this empowered skill or heavies if she does not have enough Blaze. The amount of Blaze the combos consume is based on what you actually did. So if you're just spamming basics, it's going to cost you about 70 Blaze per basic spam combo. If you are performing a perfect parry or holding down the skill, it will cost you about 40 Blaze per heavy. The ideal combos for damage would be either perfect parrying or spamming basic attacks. And before we move on to combos and teams, let's talk about Zani's intro, outro, and inherent passive. Her intro will just deal some damage and grant her some redundant energy, Her outro deals damage based on Zani's attack, and increases the damage dealt by this attack by 10% for each Ember stack on the enemy, and then increases the damage taken by said enemies by 20% from teammates. Her inherent passives are when you are in the skill before the counters, the damage you take will be reduced by 40%. And upon casting your intro skill, you will increase Zani's spectral damage by 12% for 14 seconds. For teammates, you really want a Spectral Frazzle applicator, so either Phoebe or Spectral Rover, and these are going to be the main focus of this guide. I'm not going to talk about more Teffy or Chong-Li or things like that. And you can also use a healer, such as Verena, Shorekeeper, or in some cases, Spectral Rover. Also works fine. So for the most generic team, it's probably going to be Zani, Phoebe, and Shorekeeper. So for this team, you're going to go in, use Shorekeeper's attacks until you get her Concerto, ultimate, swap into Phoebe, go into Confession via using her hold skill, then basic attack until you get off both heavies, ultimate, swap out, and then you're going to go into Zani, use her enhanced skill to grant yourself that Spectral Frazzle amplification, ultimate, and then you're going to want to either mash away or perfect parry, whatever one is more opportunistic. And once you do that, you get about 2 heavy attacks in this Phoebe team, assuming you're not swapping Phoebe back in. Now, the special part about Zani's kit, at least once you're in her ultimate, is the fact that once you see this golden button, if you press the basic attack once after this, Zani will perform her entire heavy attack by herself. Once the input is made, you do not need to be on the character. So you can swap into Phoebe or Spectral Rover and continue to apply more Spectral Frazzle even after her ultimate is already activated, which I have dubbed this Zani Reloading, as you are reloading her gauge while she's actively spending it. So what you end up doing once you reload her gauge is that you go past the 2 normal attacks that you'd usually get, and you can get up to 3, or if you're using Spectral Rover and Phoebe together, you can even get 4 heavy attacks, which obviously that only increases her potential, increases her damage, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I use Spectral Rover or Phoebe, and then I use a healer, I apply Spectral Frazzle, and my Zani does attacks. Cool, great. What weapon do I want? You can use either the 5-star standard banner weapon, you can also use the battle pass weapon, or roll her signature. Rochia's signature is also not that bad. If you have any other 5-star gauntlet, such as Zhang Liao's, go ahead and use that. Her signature is obviously going to be the best. It's 50% Spectral Frazzle amplification and some defense ignore, so pretty damn good. It's not very general use, so... And finally, for the build, it's going to be the Sonata effect. It's going to be the Spectral Frazzle set, as it grants 20% crit rate and some spectral damage bonus. And finally, we can talk about the actual good stuff. Does Zani need Phoebe? No. Do you really want Phoebe? Yes. Will Phoebe ever be replaced by a 4-star potentially? No. And I'll tell you why no. Phoebe's outro is extremely unique, as it is the only outro in the game outside of healers that doesn't go away when the original resonator that got the outro leaves the field. Think Yinlin. If you swap into your Kalcharo or Shangliao, they get the amplification, but if they swap off, they lose it. This is not the same for Phoebe. Phoebe's amplification on her outro does not go away if the original resonator swaps out. Her outro reads that it actually ends up staying for 30 seconds or until Phoebe leaves the confession state. Obviously, in a Zani team, you will never leave the confession state. And let's talk about Spectral Frazzle application. Who's better? Well, Phoebe is, unironically, obviously, much better. But how much better? So, on heavy attacks, Phoebe applies 5. She gets 2 heavy attacks, which means she's going to apply 10, plus her ultimate applies 8. If she has S1, she applies 10. So 18 on S0 Phoebe. Then Spectral Rover applies 2 per skill and 6 per ultimate, which means if you use an entire rotation to get the Concerto, it's going to be 10 stacks, and in between Zani's heavy attacks, you can apply 2 more per skill. So at max, you're getting about 14 over an entire rotation. And on Phoebe, you're default applying 18. Plus, you can also get another skill in. And last but not least, let's talk about the theory behind Zani Reload. Obviously, we know that Phoebe's outro does not leave when you swap out, and Zani's heavy attack, once it glows gold, it will allow you to press it, put the input in, swap out, it'll finish the heavy attack. And in between these heavy attacks, you obviously want to swap into either Phoebe or Spectral Rover and apply Spectral Frazzle. This will update Zani's gauge and give you more gauge to spend on more heavy attacks. And that should be all in terms of gameplay. In terms of investment, I guess I could talk about this because clearly Zani is going to be a part of like the new age of Wuthering Waves characters. It kind of seems like they know the direction that they want to go now. In terms of investment, obviously once you have Zani, I think you want to go ahead and grab Phoebe. That's going to be your highest priority. There's no bigger upgrade. Once you have Phoebe, you grab Zani's weapon. Once you have Zani's weapon, you can either do one of two things. You can go for Phoebe's S2, or you can personally invest into Zani. I would suggest if you don't have any sequences on Phoebe, go for Phoebe's weapon first, and then go for Zani's sequences after that. That's going to be the priority. That's the list right there. Boom. Outside of that, should you roll Zani? Yes, I would highly suggest anyone that has enough summons, or if they have Phoebe already, go for it. She is great in AoE, great in single target, flexibility. Being able to swap off just means unlimited potential, and who knows, there might be a Spectral Frazzle healer. But even if we don't look at leaks, which obviously there is no Spectral Frazzle healer according to leaks, I'm just completely yapping at this point. Currently, right now, using her with either Shorekeeper or a Spectral Rover and Phoebe, you are unlocking the best character in the game right now. She's about 15% better than Carlotta's best team. That's disgusting considering that Zani can also work in AoE. She doesn't have the very big weakness. But if you don't have Phoebe and you don't have enough rolls to get or guarantee a Zani and a Phoebe back to back, and you're like, what's the best next choice? Shakona is in 21 days, and by the time Shakona comes out, Cardathea leaks will already be out. And since Cardathea has basically been the sentinel and the prized girl this entire 2.0 thing, she's been like the one veiled in mystery. She's more likely to be on par or even better than Zani. So just invest in that team. It's better to have a fully invested team than to have two teams that are half-assed, at least in my opinion. It's going to make it so your teams are, or account rather, is more power creep resistant, right? As of current, there isn't massive HP inflation and difficulty spikes, but considering that Zani is such an improvement over the rest of the cast, she literally deals double the damage of Jinshi, they are probably going to have to start increasing the difficulty of the game just so players don't get bored, right? For most of my recordings, if I was using Zani with her signature weapon, I would 2-tap, right? 2 heavy attacks, kill the boss. No constellations or no sequences on Zani. She just has her weapon running her decent team. That's kind of boring, I won't lie to you. So they're eventually going to have to increase the difficulty, and I'm just saying that you probably want to start spending and investing into your account wisely, as we might end up start seeing some difficulty and HP inflation. But that's going to be all from me. This was actually my first video that was like an extremely long guide. I don't know if I'd call it detailed, but I tried to include as much stuff as possible that would get someone started, understand the concept of how Zani works, the Zani theory, if you will. But that's all from me, and you're probably going to see me again when Cardathea comes up, because Shakona literally doesn't have a kit without her.
Rover, be my salvation! The hour is upon us. Purify! No hesitation. Hopefully. Sentinel
Shut.
Sentry.
I don't have all day. Come on.
Moment of resonance. Don't cancel my crystals. Give me strength.
Reduce to dust. Reduce to dust. My shield can.
Swift and resolute.
Now I have a report.
I sense